This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Selling a little or a lot? Do your thing however you cha-ching with Shopify, the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/offer23.
Hail cheaters! Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, how are you?
Josh, I am on the team sheet this week. Talk to me about your feelings when you learned that Haaland was not going to be on the City team sheet. Now the tweets go out sort of like side eye. Who's your vice? Who's first on your bench?
Yeah.
Now, I was surprised to look at your team and, well, surprise is not quite the right word, but tell me how strategic it was to put the vice on Julian Alvarez for you.
Well, it was kind of, it wasn't a great decision in the end. I mean, it looks worse because Salah gets 2 attacking returns after the 80th minute, right, of the Palace match. I mean, I thought that might be kind of a cagey match, which it was until the red card. And my thinking was that I wanted whoever was going to be the forward in the Man City match. And then, of course, but maybe I just got a little too cute. It wasn't, honestly, it's a shame because I had a really good game week and I'm up, and it's sort of colored by the fact that I got. This is how the Premier League is, right? You're not there's absolutely no requirement to release any injury news or tell anybody what the health levels of any of your players. And so every week you kind of just have no idea who's going to be healthy or not. And so that is, it was a bit of a bummer. And I honestly just thought Haaland was going to play, to be quite honest with you. I just thought even if he didn't start, he would come off the bench. And the fact that he just didn't travel at all was a bit of a surprise for me, especially considering they lost the Villa match, right? And so I probably just didn't put as much thought into it as I should have. And so I got an assist from Alvarez. So in the end, it cost me 8 points, which is not the end of the world. I finished on I think 55 points on the game week. I'm up for the third week in a row, I think, and I'm at I'm at 1.3 million. I was at 1.93 going into game week 13. So in 3 game weeks, I've gained more than 600,000 spots. So that feels good. It feels like it's 3 green arrows in a row. I've basically chopped off like a third of my overall rank. And so another example, we sort of talk about it all the time, but it's nice to see it in action, right? That you're only ever a couple of game weeks away from like a massive jump, right? In terms of overall rank. It's 600,000 spots. It's not, it's not nothing, right? Even if there's a handful of dead teams in there, in theory, there are other people who are trying as hard as you, right? And you were able to jump over them. So I feel pretty good about that. Son has been really the star, and the fact that his ownership remains kind of surprisingly low, I think, has been really helpful, right? He's been so consistently strong. Getting 10 points away to Man City, 17 in the Newcastle match today. That one couldn't have worked out better, right? Because he gets the 17 points and then gets subbed off in the 90th minute, and then the 91st, Spurs just concede a goal out of nothing, right? Just like total, just kind of shaggy goal. So that knocks Porro off of 4 points, and so I think it. I feel okay about my game week in general. I think the Palmer transfer did not work out, sadly. Huang blanked. I got Lascelles off my bench for Haaland for -1, so that was fun. Fabian Schär 0. Jedi Anthony Robinson. That is like the one really good transfer I've made this season. I've started him 3 times, and in those 3 matches, I've gotten 2 clean sheets and an assist. Kind of spread across those 3 matches, and he keeps getting subbed early too, which is like the dream, right? They're up, 3-0, 4-0, 5-0. They're just absolutely destroying people right now.
We got a question from our Patreon supporter Shane, who asks, "What black magic did Brandon conjure up for Fulham to become peak Real Madrid and who's his next target? Of course, flashback to the always cheating hot take pod when I thought, Fulham will be the lowest scoring Premier League side for the rest of the season. And now they've scored 5 goals in the last 2 matches. And if you look at the last 4, it's an insane number of goals. And it's like that is leading to this incredible tight organization, and the midfield and the defense is very strong. Leno remains stout. My theory, Josh, is that Fulham really took that Liverpool 3-4 result personally, like Michael Jordan Last Dance style, and they are exacting their revenge on the rest of the league after that.
It's kind of interesting, right? Because sometimes when you lose a game like that, right? They were up, what was it, like 3-2 in the 85th minute, something like that. It was very, very late in that game, after the 80th minute anyway, I think. And I feel like sometimes when that happens, you're like, well, that's the last we'll see of them for a while, right? But they really they've been fantastic. The last 2 in particular, they've been awesome. So what did turn around? Because there were some questions for us for today's pod about Jimenez, and we've talked about the Fulham defense for a while now, and I think in some cases the Fulham defense looking better is simply a matter of them having good home fixtures, right? Like it's sort of, sometimes it's that straightforward. But is there some change in the attack? Is there a fantasy lens to look at it, where you're sort of like a little more? I don't know. Jimenez, right? Like, we all love Jimenez, and he effectively stopped being a fantasy asset when he got that massive head injury, which was horrible, right? A terrible moment, and it kind of took him out of the game for a couple of years. But then he scored a really nice headed goal yesterday. Seems like he's kind of, or today, and it seems like he's kind of back a little bit. So, is there anybody, Jimenez, Pereira, anybody you would, Willian, you might consider for
this is the problem is everyone there was just this huge mentality shift in the last couple of weeks, and there are so many talented players on Fulham, and you could look at Fulham as it's just a bunch of cast-offs from Willian and Iwobi to Jimenez, but they are all hitting form right at the same time. So I don't know what the fantasy takeaway is. I think the fantasy takeaway is where you need a budget pick, they're a great team to go for, like you with Anthony Robinson or Leno being a standout goalkeeper option. Yep. I think the problem with Raul Jimenez is you have other maybe higher ceiling players like Dominic Solanke that are right there and might pique your interest a little bit more. And like I was saying, like Jimenez might be, it's funny because Solanke, I think I saw this stat on Twitter that of the last 10 goals that Bournemouth have scored, Dominic Solanke has only scored 2 of them. So you think of like he's the focal point of the attack, but that's not necessarily true. So by that, like sort of number crunching, Raul Jimenez looks to be maybe even better than Solanke. But Fulham, I don't know. I'm really curious to see how much they can keep this form going. If you look at what their fixtures are coming up, it's Newcastle away, terrible. Well, you think it's terrible, but Newcastle are in a real rough patch here. Yeah. But then it's Bournemouth at the Cottage, Burnley at the Cottage, followed by Bournemouth. It's I don't know. I think it's like punt territory. It's fun, compelling punt territory.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of forwards that I would be maybe a little more inclined to take on. Solanke, one of them, certainly. I would certainly pick Solanke over Jimenez. But I think that Pereira is the one. I think it's just a little easier to bring in a cheap midfielder. I think this week we really saw the benefit of having somebody on your bench, right? And with the festive fixtures, especially game weeks 18 through 20, where there's basically not a day off in between any of these matches, right? It's just like it just kind of runs together. Having someone like Pereira, maybe if you could get him in as like a 5th midfielder, kind of bench option, wouldn't be a terrible pick. He's probably going to play all of these matches. He's got 4 assists in the last 2 games, which I think is, the fact that they scored 10 goals and he didn't score one of them is, maybe a little bit of a bummer, but, he had 3 assists in game week 15 and picked up 15 points. So, being the distributor, as long as they're kind of clicking like this, makes him definitely worth a look at fantasy.
And he's getting very far forward. He's kind of the Bernardo Silva at the moment. What Pereira had last season, if Mitrovic wasn't on the pitch, Pereira would take the pens. I think with Jimenez coming into this form and having a history of being a pen taker, I wonder if Jimenez does get the ball in a pen situation. So, but I like the Pereira shout. He's involved in everything.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? I feel like Mitchell last year had felt like 5 or 6 pens. I mean, I know he missed like all of them, but it did feel like Fulham had quite a lot of pens last year. Maybe he was a little better at being like a pen merchant or whatever. It's interesting. Actually, we saw that today with Spurs, who was going to take the pen, and maybe if Maddison were healthy, he would have been the pen taker. But maybe unsurprisingly, once Son got fouled, he grabbed the ball right away. There was no chance anyone but him was going to take that pen today. So, all right. So anyway, decent game week, feeling good. On a green arrow. How about you? How's your game week? How did your game week look?
I finished on the exact same points, 55. Green arrow as well, up 500,000 spots. The problem with my game week was not having Son, and him banging against Newcastle really hurt me. I was on like a banner game week, like 100K game week rank, and was going to jump up to like close to the top 1 million, and that would have been progress. But is progress all the same? Second green arrow in a row, and the heroes for me were in my defense, which is so rare. I made 2 transfers with 2 frees this week. I brought in Raheem Sterling, dud, and I brought in Pau Torres, which seemed kind of counterintuitive because they were hosting Arsenal, the odds of them keeping a clean sheet. But I just thought, this is a guy that I want probably for the long term, and then the price feels really good, and he delivered a 6-pointer, which is fantastic. And then I got to drink the Fulham clean sheet milkshake as well with Leno, and that 9-pointer was, I think, huge. Probably the superstar of my game week. I did have the vice on Mo Salah, which was also pivotal. Souček, getting 2 points from Souček off the bench turned out to be a pretty good deal. Looking around to see a lot of people like you get on -1 or zeros or ones or nothing. So I can't be mad about that. So I feel like my team is starting to, after going through a period where I felt like my team was totally chaotic, I feel like it's kind of starting to take shape as something maybe a little bit more structured and logical. I hope, and maybe like rebalancing my budget with some of my game week 17 transfers will get me closer to.
Yeah, I think you were mentioning to me earlier that it looks like you're going to bring in most likely Son, Trippier out, Gabriel Martinelli out, which probably time for that, unfortunately. And but in Trippier too. I mean, we can talk more about Trippier later because he is in the theme of this week's pod is buy, sell, hold, and there were a lot of questions about Trippier, so we'll cover him in there. But just for the moment, for the sake of your team, Brandon, it's Trippier out, Martinelli out, Son in. Have you given any thought to the defender you might bring in as a replacement for Trippier?
Yeah, echoes of my Raheem Sterling shout coming into game week 16. I think I'm just going to triple down, as a matter of fact, on Chelsea.
Wow.
The
I have
Reece
one,
James,
and that feels like one too many.
Yeah, listen, no one's going to sit here and argue that Chelsea are in great nick and are going to have some great results ahead of them. But the fixtures sort of argue that there could at least be fantasy returns.
Sure.
So I brought in Sterling. He didn't start. I have Cole Palmer. He got a yellow card. And the Reece James injury really looks good for, all due respect to Reece James, it looks good for Levi Colwill. And the price is right for him, and I'm in the market for a budget defender. So I think it's going to be Son and Colwill in for Trippier and Martinelli. And really is. I would give a second thought to Trippier if it wasn't this yellow card suspension. I mean, his form, the way Ange targeted him through Son was alarming, like alarm bells. And Trippier's going to be in, like, his confidence level must be in the basement, right?
Yeah. After the Everton match as well, right?
Yeah.
And
he made those two pivotal mistakes.
Yeah. That was a weird one. That this is what happens when you are in America and these matches take place, because I was watching, or not full on watching them, but the way, I don't know what other Americans do. Maybe they just have like jobs where they can just I can't even like listen to music with words and get work done, right? So it's like, let alone like full on watch a match, right? But what I often do is I'll have the phone my phone will be on basically, and I'll have the match, and I'll put it like in one headphone, and it's just sort of keep the volume
That's
low.
the same thing of what you just described. How is that?
Low volume,
how are you dividing your attention?
I'm not watching, okay. Right? The phone is turned over and the volume is low. So it's just, maybe it's just after many years of doing, like, you and I used to do Talk Sport. Remember back in the day? This is before.
Sure, I love Talk Sport,
Yeah.
At least I don't love their comment. I don't love their like ancillary broadcast, but the radio commentary of the live matches is great.
Used to be, but I think it was like accidentally. I don't think we were even supposed to get access. It was like early days of the internet. It wasn't even that. It was like 2012 or whatever. But like they cut us off. But so I got used to listening to matches. I think our friend John T. That's like the only way I think he basically only listens to matches. He'll go for walks and listen to them. But anyway, so we were. I was listening to the match, and they were, I think it was like 0-0 in the 60th minute, and then I had to go to a meeting, and could not bring my phone with. Okay, I was allowed to bring my phone.
This game was like a week ago at this point, Josh.
It was Thursday. I don't know. I mean, it was 3 days ago. It was a game week ago. That's true. But anyway, I came back and it was 3-0, and it was like a shocking. Yeah. I was like one of those moments where I was like, is that real? Like, how could they have scored 3 goals? But. So yes, I think Trippier. It feels like maybe now. I mean, he's so expensive too, right? And so it's a shame because I don't think it's an absolute urgent must do it. It's he doesn't play in 17, but he does play in 18. And so it's a pretty good fixture for them as well. I mean, they play Luton Town. I mean, Luton's playing 3 or 4 teams in game week 18, but they one of them is Newcastle. So I think that actually brings me to a couple of quick reminders here, Brandon. One is the game week 18 blanks, right? So it's game week 17 in front of us, but the weekend after this, Man City and Brentford are not playing. That's because Man City is doing the what is it called again? Is it the
Club World Cup?
The Club World Cup. So they're away for the Club World Cup. It's a good excuse if you still have Mbomo, who's injured for a while. He's also leaving for AFCON. So is Vissa, by the way. Did you know that Vissa is also leaving for the African Cup of Nations? So
been a while since I did a drive-by of Vissa's Wikipedia page, I'll be honest with you.
Well, I'm here to inform you then. But interestingly enough, the weekend that they leave, which is game week 21, that is the exact day, or I think it's like the day after, Ivan Toney is eligible to return for Brentford. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, and it'll be fun to talk about him again. I mean, it wasn't like he was in prison. He was just suspended for a while. I'm happy to bring this guy back into my squad. So it'll be fun to talk about. It'll be fun to talk about Tony again when he's back. But so we have the game week 18 blanks, but then. And this is looking a little farther ahead because it is game week 21. That is still 4 weeks away. But I think it's useful to know that African Cup of Nations and the Asian Cup both kick off in mid-January. And Salah will be leaving for that. Son will be leaving for that. And Mbomo, not even clear if he'll be healthy, but Mbomo in theory. Kudus, who's another player that a lot of people have been bringing in. The West Ham players played. He's been great outside of the Fulham match, I guess. Vissa and even your boy Onana, Brandon, is going to be leaving for the African Cup. I actually saw something that Onana was worried about whether he should go or not because he was like, if I leave, I might not get my place back in the starting keeper for Man
United. He's committed greater crimes on the pitch than he will on an airplane to AFCON. So I don't think you should worry about that.
Yeah. So so the interesting thing though is that I know I'm looking further ahead, but it's useful I think when you're starting to make transfers to, because you effectively don't want to necessarily have to make 2 transfers. Someone like Son, he's so good. They play Forest in game week 17. It just makes sense to have him, right? It makes sense to have him, even if you're only going to have him for 4 weeks. But for some of these kind of cheaper mid-table options, it's not necessarily a move you want to make, right? Because you're effectively making 2 transfers at that point, right? There's the transfer to bring the player in, and then there's another transfer later on that you're going to have to use to take them out. The only
I will just say, I want to just jump in and say the counter argument to that is you get 1 free transfer every week. Where's the detriment to that sort of transfer policy? That's assuming.
You must be luckier than me then, because I have 2 or 3 injuries every single week that I have been spending my transfers taking care of.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess it's assuming that is a situation, but then that's assuming that those are situations, fires that you want to put out. Sometimes you have this dead weight on your bench where you'd make the other argument of it's not worth spending a transfer to get rid of this guy to bring in another guy who's going to be on the bench. I think there are interesting options. Like say Mboma was fit, Son being in the form that he's in. Bring in, you got 4 game weeks to capitalize, out, then back in. This is just kind of, I think, a very legitimate way to play.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think someone like Son is fine, but I think like if I was looking at a midfield option, I probably wouldn't bring in Kudus now just because there's 5, 6, 7 players all in that kind of 4, and Huang, by the way, is another player who's also leaving for the Asian Cup. So, it just sort of depends on how long your window is. I did bring him in, but that was also, he had 2 great home fixtures in 15 and 16. And it felt like that was, at that point, you're talking about like a 6-week window. And the one caveat here too, just to make things even more complicated, is the game week 21 is a stretched out game week. It starts on Saturday, January 13th. It ends on Monday, January 22nd. It stretches over 2 weekends. And then the weekend after that is the FA Cup. And then game week 22 doesn't kick off until January 30th. So we basically only have 1 fixture in January that takes place over the entire month of January. So that'll be really don't captain a player for the first game of that fixture, Brandon, would be my advice. So it's possible that some of these clubs will, or some of these countries will be knocked out of these cups. And it's just, obviously we just don't know at this point. We saw, a couple years ago, we saw it with Son where it felt like every single match he played in the African Cup of Nations was a 0-0 that went to extra time. Remember this? It was like quarterfinals, semifinals, final. And of course they just kept losing to Senegal. But they and you were like, oh my gosh, like this is so many minutes for Son or for Salah, excuse me. And but then he came back and played 2 days later. But he was kind of cooked after that. Do you remember this?
Yeah,
this is like 3.
I do.
Yeah. So hopefully that isn't the case again with Son or with Salah this year. But anyway, just planting some seeds of worry, which everybody wants ahead of the holidays, Brandon.
Pre-problem. Let's do that.
Yes, pre-problem. So let's move on though. Always Cheating Super League. Brandon, why don't you read off the top 10 in the Always Cheating Super League?
Absolutely. Yeah. Congrats to everybody in the top 10 and the AC Super League. It's free to enter. Just go to our website or on our social media, and the join code is right there. In 10th place, we have Dave Monahan. In 9th, Dan Clark, Dan Carrillo in 8th, Akiraj PP is in 7th place. Jonathan Okarat in 6th, and 5th, Conrad Whitey. Whitey? Yeah, that looks right.
Conrad Whitey. That sounds like a character like a Dave
Southern
Chappelle
General.
Yeah.
Lauritis Poust in 4th place. Kevin Middleton in 3rd. Matthew Allen in 2nd place, holding it down in 1st place with a banger of a game week, 71 points. Peter Halfsmo Stieg. Well done, Peter. Yeah. Again, that's the Always Cheating Super League.
Yeah, such a banger. I think that blew out your microphone there, Brandon. That's how much of a banger yada yada Peter Hofmostige had this week. All right, so quick hits here, Brandon. It's the holiday season. Maybe you got a Christmas bonus. Maybe you just maybe you're just feeling festive and you want to support the cheaters. That would be great. Go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. You get a bonus podcast each week. You also get to talk with us and others on the Discord, which is always running. We have another one of those Beat the Average leagues starting up in a couple of weeks here, which was I thought that would run the entire season, and it was such a bloodbath. I think it was settled by game week 10 or something like that. And the goal for this is, every week, all you have to do is beat the overall average for all 10 plus million players in the game. And if you do that, you get to stay in the league. If you don't, you get knocked out. I got knocked out in game week 2. I don't know how long you lasted, Brandon, but that is up and running that's up and running on the Discord. And just a quick thank you to our newest Patreon supporters, Barry Henderson and Julian Douglas. Thank you, Barry and Julian. So go to patreon.com/alwayscheating to get Discord and extra pods and all kinds of other stuff.
Cool, Josh. Let's take a quick break and come back and play a little game we call Buy, Sell, Hold ahead of game week 17.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy and streamlined so I can spend more time on the rest of my business. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
This episode is brought to you by Columbia Sportswear. It's snowing again, and that wind chill is killer. But you're not worried about that because you shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection. It's warmth perfected with tiny gold dots that reflect your body heat inside and protect you from the cold outside. No snow or chilly temps can stop you now. Go out anyway. Shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection now at Columbia.com/infinity.
All right, we're back. Game week 17 kicks off on Friday. Just a reminder, a Friday deadline this week. You have Spurs away to Nottingham Forest. Spurs are just always a fun team right now, like in the Ainge era. So I feel like that's a good Friday match. Spurs versus anybody is a Friday match that I'm looking forward to. The first question though has nothing to do with Spurs. So what a great tee up that I just did there. First question though, it's an important one. I've got a couple Man City ones to kick things off here, Brandon. First question is from Sid Gopich-Kar, and he says, is it time for Haaland to go? So it's a tricky one, obviously, with Haaland injured. Also doesn't have a fixture in game week 18. Also scores 1 to 9 goals in every match that he plays in the Premier League. So, how are you feeling about? It's a wide range. How do you feel about Haaland?
Well, so Pep's comments about Haaland's injury today were it's not a broken bone or anything like that. It's a stress on the bone.
Yep.
And then Pep suggests he could be fit for Crystal Palace, which is next game week. Yep. Or Saudi Arabia, where the Club World Cup is going to be played. So there is this little teaser from Pep saying maybe Haaland is back starting as early as game week 17. But there is that blank in game week 18. And I think the other really important thing for managers thinking of dropping or keeping Haaland is his price has not moved since the game began. It is still at 14.0, meaning you have no value tied up in him. Meaning, if you drop him, you're not giving up anything apart from having him in a particular game week. If anything, It could be like the most prudent financial decision you could make, in that Haaland could drop in price during this period, and you could drop him and buy him back for 13.9. I can't imagine he'd drop down to 13.8. Any lower than that, I doubt. And I do. I mean, don't you think that that's kind of like optimistic that he would even drop in price, given how big his ownership is? What is the tipping point where he would actually fall over?
I don't plan to drop him, to be honest. I think he's a hold. It's funny, he's not even a buy because everyone owns him. He is like, well, I guess there was that kind of moment where like Haaland out was a thing, and I feel like that blew up so comprehensively that we got past that a little bit.
I mean, if you would have stuck with it, it would have really worked. I mean, our friend Disable Luke, he was part of the Haaland out brigade and kind of did all right for a couple of weeks. Yeah, there was like one major influx of points. But then Luke decides ahead of this game week, he transfers Salah out so he can get back Haaland to captain him. And so
is that
like
right?
Haaland can blow up in so many different comprehensive sorts of ways. I'm generally with you, though. The move has been this season, sadly, just to figure out how you can get the three premiums in Son, Salah, and Haaland. And if you get rid of Haaland now, it like makes sense on paper in that. But what you're going to end up doing probably is spread that money around. And how do you do it so you can easily get Haaland back? That is the question for me.
Yeah, I mean this is why it doesn't really work, you know, to drop them because there's always the kind of like, oh, in theory, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this one move. I'm going to keep the money in my bank, or I'm going to move it to this one player, and then I have these two moves that I'm going to do after that. But what ends up happening is like the biggest thing are just injuries, just a constant influx of new injuries that are sometimes they're kind of the 75%ers. We're there right now with Areola, where I don't know what I'm going to be able to do with him yet, right? Like because the comments from Moyes were a little open ended there, where they were like, well, what's how fit do you think he is? So this is after the midweek match. He's like, it's a wrist injury.
The interviewer says, when is he going to be back? And Moyes says, when do you think he's going to be back?
Yeah, he was just like, when we think it was after the Spurs match, actually. And they said, well, it's a wrist injury. When do you think he's going to be back? And he said, we thought he might be okay to start the Spurs match. Right. So they thought he would be okay to start game week 15. And so if they felt that way, and obviously he didn't start 15, didn't start 16 either. And so to me, it's really an open question whether he is fit enough to play in game week 17 or game week 18, which I think is pertinent for most of us, because I would really, really love to not spend a transfer in a blank game week replacing my keeper. I mean, having Flecken is probably the worst transfer. I mean, I guess I brought it. Does it still count as a transfer you made it on a wild card? I suppose it does. I'll just call him a buy. He's one of the worst buys that I have made in 10 plus years of playing fantasy. He has been beyond worthless. All keepers are bad this year, but there's a special place for Flecken, who has just conceded a goal in back-to-back matches versus Luton and Sheffield. So congrats to him. I don't know how it was possible to concede in both those matches, but so he has. So I don't know what we're going to do on that front. Sorry, I got a little distracted talking about keepers there, Brennan, because we touched on something that was adjacent to my own particular strategic concerns, and I had
your
to follow
team is
that
a third
road,
rail, Josh.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Follow that road.
But I was just looking at West Ham's fixture for game week 18 when you would have to bench Flecken, and they have Manchester United at home. Areola is so funny because everyone is dying to get rid of this guy before he got injured, and now that he's injured, people are sort of like, I mean, I understand your case where you've got not a good rotation.
Might not have a keeper. Yeah.
Now everyone kind of wants to hang on to him. Let's get back to Erling Haaland. It sounds like neither of us are planning to get rid of him, and I think the concern is always with forwards, the corner that you paint yourself in when you don't have somebody, because it's like midfield and defense is somehow structurally different because there are more guys in that line. With only 3 forwards in your team, it's very easy on the high end and the low end. Like people who own Archer right now are just kind of like, do I ever start this guy? And now he's just like a waste of a player if I never start him. And it's the same way with Haaland being as expensive as he is. If you get rid of him, how will you ever get him back?
Yeah, and I think that's why my plan right now is to hope that he starts the Palace match, and I doubt we're going to get any kind of definitive information. I assume he will not start the Champions League game. I think Pep didn't even hint that would be the case. I don't think they need anything from that match. So, and unfortunately, you and I both own Alvarez, and there was a question from GP about I'll bring him into the conversation here. So GP says, is it crazy to sell Alvarez for Dominic Solanke ahead of a home match against a weakened Palace and likely without Haaland? And I think this is where things get a little tricky, because if Haaland is healthy and available to play next weekend, and Alvarez starts at midweek, which I think is also possible, then it's kind of hard to imagine Alvarez starting that match. It'll just been a ton of matches in a row for him. Pep does tend to rotate those forward spots. I know he plays a kind of essential role. I don't know. I mean, it's sort of
Alvarez has started every single game this season.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, but he hasn't. It feels like he hasn't played well in like 10 weeks. I don't know. It's like he's I mean, what did you think about his performance leading the line for Luton today? I mean, he was like non-existent basically.
Well, yeah, it's hard to say with a Pep squad because there is so much movement and rotation on the pitch. It's hard to recall a particular play where he really opened up the space or did something.
Yeah. I guess the Grealish goal, I guess, would be the one.
Certainly.
Quasi handball or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, the eye always goes to Bernardo Silva in matches like that, where he's just pulling all of the strings. But yeah, for Grealish to score a goal, somebody else has to do something spectacular in my mind. Yeah. So I don't know. It's the Alvarez question is, I feel like it becomes a very fantasy question because I don't want to be like, oh, this guy's playing terribly. It's just not working fantasy wise. And I think that's where you can really just sort of end that conversation and have the wherewithal to get rid of him. I will hold on to Alvarez until game week 18, and then I'll move him to I'll probably move him to Solanke at that point.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am as well. I think Haaland is a hold. Let's at least through the next 4 days. I mean, right? I mean, I don't know. Is Pep even telling the truth about Haaland's foot, right? Like, who knows, right? And so we may get more information about Haaland over the course of the next. We've seen this many times before, where like a seemingly minor injury, suddenly the player's out for 6 weeks, right? Like it's sort of the new. I remember this happening with Dominic Calvert-Lewin it's like 2 or 3 years ago now, but he was it seemed like this minor injury, and suddenly he was out for 3 months. And so it's similar kind of foot injury, if I recall. Maybe it was a knee. It doesn't matter. But anyway, so I think that we may find out more on Haaland that makes things a little easier for us. And I think that it's hard to resolve the Alvarez question until we decide what to do with Haaland. So my inclination right now is just to have them both for Palace and, like you, decide in game week 18 what I want to do. And I really haven't, I wouldn't mind just benching both of them. I think that is an option. Just benching both and then having them both for 19 through 19 through 21. But it's hard to say. I have been kind of itching to sell Alvarez for a while anyway. He's just sort of a frustrating player, right? It's sort of a forward who's playing in a midfield spot. The returns are never so poor that it feels essential to drop him, and yet every single week I feel like I'm like a little disappointed, right? It's like you always you hope for like a little bit more. And I think this Luton match, I thought we might see a little more from him, but it was basically the same Alvarez that we've seen the last few weeks, which is he's just a little peripheral. I felt like Foden impressed more, Grealish impressed more, like you said, Bernardo Silva impressed more, and Alvarez was just like another guy on the pitch, right? Just didn't really do that much.
Yeah, you never want to be just another guy, and he's falling down the rankings. I mean, your boy Hwang Hee-chan is just 4 points behind Alvarez at that point. And you're looking at basically the reverse of Alvarez, where Alvarez is a fantasy forward playing in a midfield position. Hwang Hee-chan is classed as a midfield playing in a forward position. And that's the ideal for fantasy, is you always want your fantasy asset to be playing farther forward on the pitch than what they're fan. Just the straight value for Alvarez right now with cast your mind back, Josh, to the first month of this season. I feel like we were talking a lot about how there were no forwards who were popping off and scoring points. And now it feels like we do have options. For God's sake, we're talking about Fulham. We did like a whole 5-minute rundown.
Yeah, that was shocking.
Fulham and Raul Jimenez.
That was not in the running order. That was me riffing and God help everyone who listened through that.
So I think now's the time to sell or prepare to sell Alvarez. Yes.
Yeah. But most of us will probably have other problems, at least in game week 17. So it brings us to Trippier. We did talk about him a little bit. You mentioned that you're planning to drop Trippier. It would have been so easy to just hold and move on, right? But then he gets that fifth yellow card, and it feels like honestly he's been lucky not to get that fifth earlier, right? Like not just in this match, but just the last few. It feels like he's got a yellow card to him like every match at the moment, and I wonder honestly if he's just playing too much. It feels like they need to. I guess with their injuries, there's just nothing they can do, right? But it just feels like he's played a ton of minutes. I felt that way a little bit about Bruno Guimaraes and Joe Linton today too. I mean, it was just like 2 weeks ago, you and I were talking about their performance against Man United and how strong they looked, and since then they just look increasingly exhausted, right? Like I thought that I was really surprised to see their midfield get kind of overrun by Spurs today. That was not something I expected to happen.
Yeah, and it does not bode well at all for them for Newcastle midweek because they're fighting for their lives in the Champions League, and they're home AC Milan. I think that pretty evenly matched game there, but they look totally out of gas. And Trippier will definitely be playing in that match because he'll have his yellow card suspension in the Premier League. Newcastle just need a break. They really do. I think it's similar with Alvarez and Man City. It's weird. Man City, with all their resources, somehow have a pretty small squad at the moment, as does Newcastle. And suddenly Arsenal look like they have the biggest squad where they can basically bring in one of 10 players to take the place of Martinelli right now. Yeah.
Although I guess we should credit Villa for beating Arsenal and Man City within 1 week, 1-0 at home in both matches. That is a very difficult thing to pull off, right? Like it was so impressive in both matches. I thought, by the way, I mean, I consider myself an Arsenal supporter, even though some will question how hardcore of a supporter I am, and I just have to take that one on the chin. But I thought that Arteta was like, what was it like? That ball was handballed 3 times in 10 seconds. Like, of all the kind of VAR things to get mad about, I felt like the VAR decision was like one of the more straightforward decisions in that. Sure. Like this has not been a great season for VAR, but that was not one that I was like especially up in arms about.
Arteta has gone to the night school graduation course of Jurgen Klopp's How to Treat the Media and the Officials, aka with contempt. Utter disrespect and contempt. I mean, I think Arteta is pretty impressive apart from how he actually treats the media and officials, because I agree. And it was funny. It's easy for Unai Emery to do this, but after the match, Unai Emery made a very pointed remark of like, I respect the officials. I think it's the most important thing in the game to always respect the referees. Always. Yeah. And now when you've just won,
easier to say. Sure.
It's easier to say, but I think their managers are starting to become self-aware. All these baby managers can't take the heat and are just like losing their cool in front of the cameras.
Yeah. I mean, I just think he's kind of red zoning right now, but listen, you and I are not immune, me even especially maybe, about red zoning when it comes to VAR and just like ceasing to be rational about it. Mm-hmm. But I feel like you gotta keep your wick dry too. I mean, I guess it was a 1-0 defeat, so maybe it's just harder to, everything's a little more charged there, but
the way Arteta should have just recognized that through many stretches in that match, Arsenal were the better team. And they just failed to score any goals, which of course is a big problem. But Arsenal are still in a great position and they need to keep their cool. This is what happened to them at the end of last season, is that they just kind of withered under the pressure. And that starts with Arteta.
Yeah, it was, and they've had some nice wins recently, and so I think this is just, I just don't think it should linger. Because I agree with you about their squad size and depth in general. I think they probably are the deepest team in the Premier League right now. We've been a little bit luckier with injuries as well. Although they've had their share too. I mean, it's remarkable across the Premier League how many injuries there've been this season. All right, so Trippier. Probably a drop, but if you have the bench depth to drop him for basically, obviously he's not going to start for game week 17. So if you have the bench depth to get away with it, I think given the blanks in 18, he's somewhere between a sell and a hold, depending on what kind of problems it solves to drop him, right? Like in your case, super lot. It's like, it's one of the easiest -4s you can take, right? It's like you're turning Martinelli into Son, and then you're taking a player who's not playing in game week 16, right? Or in 17 and dropping him. So it's pretty straightforward. But in some cases, people will already have Son and they'll have Trippier, and it's like, just leave him on the bench for a week.
For sure. Just do it. Okay. That takes us, of course, to Everton and Decore, where everyone's talking, including Thorpums wants to know, is Decore worth taking a punt? Now, we could talk about Fulham being this insane form team. We've got to give respect to Everton, who have taken this 10-point deduction and they've put it in a giant pipe and proceeded to smoke it. It's incredible. They have Burnley away in game week 17, followed by some not great fixtures. Spurs and Manchester City. Then it's Wolves, Villa, Fulham, and then Spurs again. There's always this pivot in the midpoint of the season where it's like everyone plays Luton for the 15th time. So what are you thinking about Everton right now as a club to invest in? And these fixtures in particular, is their form good enough to take you beyond what the fixtures look like?
Well, it's, you and I saw Decore in person in that Palace match, and he has been playing. Obviously, he's playing more advanced right now, and I think that does change the equation a little bit. It's not, because he is often more of a kind of central, kind of box to box type midfielder, which those tend not to be players you really want to have in fantasy, right? They can sort of get hot from time to time, and then just sort of disappear, right? You can have a 10-week stretch where you get nothing from them. But, Decore, well, first of all, he has had some really nice moments over his, how many years has he been? Let's see. This is his 8th season in the Premier League, Brandon. So I think that he's honestly probably a little under the radar. I think my only concern with Everton in general and getting a Everton midfielder or, I don't know. I mean, I guess I really wouldn't honestly consider Calvert-Lewin, but let's just say midfielder is, I don't know if they score enough goals, right? Like, it's just in general, I'm a little wary of, I understand, like they just scored 5 collective goals against Newcastle and Chelsea, which is very impressive. But I just think, I don't know. Well, even the Spurs match, I suppose, I don't know. Spurs did look a little better today. So maybe
I need you to commit on this Everton question, Josh. Yes or no?
I think personally, I would not buy. I would not buy an Everton player. I like Decore. He's in a nice run of form. I don't trust them to score enough goals, so I would not have an Everton player. How about you?
Yeah, I wouldn't either. The only player is kind of tempting is, I think, maybe Jordan Pickford or Mikolenko. Like, when I was looking at my 4.5 defender replacements, Mikolenko bumped up there. There is Braithwaite, but as far as their attack, I'm kind of with you. There are too many other options, and I wonder if the Everton sort of party is gonna flag during the festive period when the fixtures get harder, and then they now have this sense of, oh, we can overcome this 10-point deduction. We'll be fine. The teams below us will be set adrift. So I feel like that pressure and that sort of ecstatic feeling that they may have right now might wane.
Yeah, and that's the Spurs. It's just looking at the Spurs Man City double that they have in 18-19, and then again in 23-24. And I feel like you don't see that often, right? Where they just, because for anybody who doesn't know, the obviously you have 38 teams. Everybody plays each other twice, once home, once away. But what people may not know is that it's literally the same 10 fixtures on the reverse side, right? So whatever in game week 1, those 10 matches, when they then get played, right? Like when home becomes away, it's the same 10 matches that particular game week. That obviously can change if there's a double game week or something like that. But the actual sort of as like put in the calendar, right? It's the reverse. So I feel like it's a little strange to have the reverse fixtures played so close to the original fixtures, right? Doesn't that seem a little unusual to you? I don't know.
I don't have total recall of calendars past, but it does boggle the mind.
All right, Brendan, let's do one last buy, sell, hold here, and it's about defenders. And the question comes from me, Josh Landon, and the question is, are there literally any defenders that you could recommend buying right now? So you think Colwell is the one who, but even again, that's sort of like by default, right? Like he's sort of, he's the one, he hasn't necessarily been rotation proof, but maybe with the James injury he is. It's really hard right now to recommend any defenders, right? As players to spend your transfers on.
You take the best defense in the league, Arsenal, and I brought in Saliba 3 game weeks ago, and it's been a nightmare. So there are many things to consider and then immediately discount. Who are the best defenders? That is not proven to make them the best defensive assets in fantasy at all.
Yeah.
Arsenal, and all of these defensive assets are relying on attacking returns. Pedro Porro is probably leading the hot 100 defenders list right now. And Chelsea, I still think this fixture run for Chelsea could be fun if it ever works. And there is clearly no guarantee that will ever work with Chelsea. But we've already had the Everton fixture now coming up. It's Sheffield United at home, the best fixture in the calendar, followed by Wolves, Palace, Luton, and then Fulham. Now, Fulham are going to put 20 past Chelsea at this rate.
Outside of Porro, who you mentioned, he is the only one, and I think the reason, which I think you sort of also were getting at, is that Porro is the one defender outside of maybe Trent who is just sort of, he might just be too expensive really to consider at $8 million, given that Liverpool aren't a especially strong defensive team right now. I think the Porro is the one because you are buying him to buy an attacking player who might occasionally get you a clean sheet, right? It's like you have to change your whole way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you think of defenders to buy, you think about them as players who are going to get clean sheets for you, right? The players that defend, and I mean, who are the two strongest defenses in the Premier League? You said Arsenal. I think Man City is the other one, right? And Man City haven't kept a clean sheet since game week 10. It's just very hard to look at these squads and look at the strength of their defense and use that as a measure to guide your transfer decisions. I mean, I think this is basically what you were saying, and I'm just restating it. But so I think viewed through that lens, I'm just looking at 17, for example. It's like, sure, might as well get Porro, right? They play, they play Forest. I expect lots of goals in that one, right? He's on corner kicks. He seems like a really strong option. I think Colwell is fine. I mean, honestly, if you're going to just throw a pick at a dartboard, having a Chelsea defender when they play Sheffield United at home is just probably a strong pick, right? Like Sheffield United, only Brentford are conceding goals to Sheffield United, right? It's just they're really it's just a real struggle for them at the best of times to
that performance by Brentford against Sheffield United was worrying. I mean, not having Nbomo. This is totally out of form. If it's all going to fall to Maupay, it's going to be a mess for a while.
That's more than Maupay can handle. I think that's more than.
Yeah. Now I'm going to ask you a hypothetical here. If Trent Alexander-Arnold cost $6.5 million, would you be looking at getting him in right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be looking to get him in this week if he was that cheap. I find $8 million to be pretty tricky, though, right? If I've got almost $10 million in Son, whatever Salah is right now, I don't have all the prices in front of me, but 14 in Haaland, Salah was 12.8. Son is, I guess he's only 9.4. It's just hard to get there with an $8 million defender, right? I mean, you struggled to get Son because you have Trippier, right, at 6.5 or whatever it is. And so, tack another 1.5 on there and just see how much flexibility you lose right across your squad. So, so I think if he was 6.5, it would be easier to look at him because, again, he's just in a great offensive, a great run of attacking form at the moment. He seems really confident. He's right. It's like free kicks and that goal he scored against Man City was a beautiful goal, right? It's like the goal of a confident player. So it's what I'm actually surprised by when it comes to Liverpool is that Tsimikas has not been able to do anything. I know he had that Brentford match where he played well, but I was just even after the red card in the Palace match, I was like, well, maybe he's going to get involved, but that team is just everything runs down the right, the right hand side of the pitch. And then it's sort of like, they might get some scraps over on the left-hand side, right? I mean, Diaz had a moment. He almost scored a nice goal. I was offside, but yeah, just in general, it's pretty hard for for anybody. I mean, I don't know. I guess Robertson was maybe like you trusted a little bit more, but back in the day, you had the Robbo Mane combination over there, right? And I don't think Diaz Tsimikas is quite clicking at the same level. Maybe one day, Brandon. Maybe one day in the near future, but not so far.
Yeah, I feel like every week I ask this is the segment we like to call, how are they doing it? How are the managers fitting in Salah, Haaland, Son, and Trent? How are they doing it? And I don't, here's my thesis. I don't think they are doing it. Who is going to be sacrificed for any one of these players? So that's the argument of, I feel like Haaland is, we're getting the least production out of Haaland right now. So I'm going to sacrifice him so I can run out Son, Salah, and Trent. That's not what we're going to choose to do. But I am not, even with Trent's run of attacking form, I don't think he's going to be able to sustain that enough to justify dropping any of those 3 attacking players to get him in.
Yeah. And speaking of Trent and Liverpool, Brandon, why don't we take a quick look ahead to game week 17, which kicks off on Friday, possibly the marquee fixture of game week 17, though that's arguable. Maybe it's now Newcastle Fulham, given Fulham's recent form, but the one that's in the final, the final match of the game week block is Liverpool hosting Man United. Man United somehow skated by with nary a mention on this entire pod, Brennan. How did that not happen? I don't know. I mean, they just got waxed at home to Bournemouth, and you and I respectfully did not even bring that up on today, or we forgot to. Some combination of both, maybe.
That's how bad it's gotten for Manchester United. They're now the forgotten club.
Yeah, that was just a thing that happened that I didn't need to get remarked upon.
They are getting the I don't even think about you at all award for game week 16.
Which is tough. I mean, you and I, how long did you and I both gut it out with Bruno and Rashford? About
too long,
8 weeks apiece. Yeah, it was a very, very long time. I think I made it through 2 full international breaks before I finally gave up on those two. So Liverpool do host Man United in 17. I mean, when it comes to captaincy, I have my bus team captain is on Salah right now. I think you can make an argument for Son in that Forest match, just given his remarkable form. They are away. That's a factor. Man City, it just feels like there's gonna be too much doubt on whether Haaland plays or not for him to be a likely captain pick. I mean, he probably either starts or doesn't play at all. But still, it's just that you don't want to be in a situation where he struggles. They want to give him a shot. He goes out there, and then at the 13th minute, he limps off, right?
And we're likely not going to learn anything about Haaland in the midweek Champions League fixture because City have already won their group, and there's no point in them bringing Haaland out for that. So, I would love, I think we'd both love this if Alvarez also got benched and Pep just plays the kids because it's a dead rubber.
Oh, yeah, midweek. Yeah, I hope so. I don't know. I mean, I was thinking, we talked about that a little bit earlier, and I just feel like he's going to give Alvarez some time there and maybe see if he can score a goal, get his confidence.
We just need to squeeze one more week out of Alvarez. That's all we ask. I do not want to have to think about that one. I am also on Mo Salah on my bus team, and you just have to look at Liverpool's track record against Manchester United. In recent seasons, and Salah virtually always comes through with a big haul, and I love it. I love how he's just getting fantasy points without really trying at the moment.
He scored a nice. Even the goal kind of fell to him, and then the assist was one of those like. It wasn't exactly.
Here you do something.
Here you do something.
And Harvey Elliott just totally made that goal. It was
what a great
really
goal
nice.
That was. Yeah.
But that's just why Salah is the fantasy king, is he's always so close to goal, serving up those meatballs over the plate.
So I think Salah is the clear, and also that just in terms of X fun, Brandon. I think that having your captain play in the last fixture of the game week is always kind of fun because it's sort of you're like, well, no matter what happens, I still have my captain to play in the final match of the game week. So I think that he is the clear captain pick. I think if you wanted to go off the board a little bit, you could consider someone like Saka at home to Brighton. Brighton are just, That was one of the predictions that so far has held up, Brandon, on our hot take pod, which is that Brighton will not keep a clean sheet for the rest of the season. That one's I still feel pretty good about that one, and I would expect multiple goals conceded in the when Arsenal is Brighton on Sunday.
Yeah, I like the Saka pick. I think that I didn't think he. I think he played okay against Aston Villa.
Okay.
As I said, I thought Arsenal as a whole sort of played okay.
Yeah.
Gabriel
Nobody
Jesus,
looks good there. Yeah,
that's fair. Gabriel Jesus was kind of crazed in that match. I thought maybe he needed a little bit more composure. I mean, what Jesus brings to the squad is that sort of dogged energy on the pitch. But let's get a little composure up there.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's the same story with him. It's kind of like Darwin, right? It's like these players. It's like the script. There's a script, right? With Gabriel Jesus, he'll do everything that you want a forward to do except score goals, right? It's like in Darwin. Well, I don't know what is the script. The script with Darwin is that he should be scoring more goals. I don't know. It's like I don't know that he's quite at the Gabriel Jesus does everything you want a forward to do level, but he certainly looks like he could score goals. He looks like
Darwin is reading the script possible. Like he's reading the stage instructions as well. Like he's like, alas, Juliet, exit stage left.
Yeah,
like no, Darwin, you don't have to say that. That's fine. You just exit.
Yeah, and of course he got subbed right before the red card as well, which is just that's just the Darwin. That Darwin is just like the step on the rake player right now this season. Mm-hmm. There's actually some pretty stiff competition for that. Like the fact that Marcus Rashford is now possibly done at Man United. I don't really know. It's like he just doesn't start anymore. Is he gonna have to move somewhere? Like it's like
does anybody leave that club next season? I guess Inter or AC Milan is where all those players go. Follow the Alexis Sanchez
Pulisic and Giroud. Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah. So, how about this one, Brendan? I'm going to let you go first in this one because I need to come up with mine. But who is your ex-DIH, Brendan? Who's your ex-dog in him for Game Week 17? It's brought to you by the Hit Movie Strays. Available at Red Boxes everywhere.
Red Boxes Strays brings you Gerard Bowen. I think on Sunday, hosting Wolves. West Ham need to get their act together in so many ways, and Bowen is not a loser. Bowen is a winner. He holds a European trophy right now that he scored the game-winning goal in, and he's not going to suffer these foolish 5-0 losses on the other side of London. So I think Bowen's going to come out with that dog in him and do the business. And I want to say that to comfort people who have cash wrapped up in this guy as a fantasy asset. He will come good.
Yeah. I'll go with a popular, highly on pick. I think that Ollie Watkins steps back in, Brandon, and scores a goal away to Brentford on Sunday. I think that he's maybe been a little unlucky. He was lucky not to concede an own goal in that match. I don't know if you saw that moment with Martinez and Watkins. Like that was like 3 inches away from being a really painful own goal for Aston Villa.
Yeah, it was also 3 inches away from being a Saliba goal. So there were lots
was it really? Oh man,
I was sweating bullets inside and out.
A real sliding doors moment. Yeah, which I want to see. I want to see you sweating bullets inside. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds like a lot of sweat.
It's provocative. Yeah. It's messy. Now I know Josh Landon, and I know you wouldn't give the ex-DIH to Watkins if you weren't thinking about this guy. So are you doing what I think you're doing? Are you
going
bringing
Alvarez to Watkins?
No, I wonder if you were doing Isak to Watkins.
Isak may have to go, unfortunately. I'm going to decide what to do with Isak based on if he starts the Champions League match, which I think there's a good chance. It's hard to say now because Callum Wilson did get minutes, right? Came out as a sub in the 60th, 65th minute, something like that. So there's a chance that Wilson starts at midweek, which is what I really hope happens. And if so, I'll probably stick with Isak. If Isak starts the Champions League match, you have to think that Wilson starts at the weekend. In which case, there is a part of me that really does want to just move to Watkins. I also think, the other move would be Solanke, which Bournemouth hosts Luton on Saturday. And I honestly think those are equally good picks. I think maybe Solanke actually might be a slightly stronger pick, just given that they are home. You'd have to I don't know if they've like put up anytime goal scoring odds for next weekend yet, but he's got to be considered one of the strongest. I suppose honestly, we were talking about offbeat captain picks, like players who, I don't know, but like there are people out there who listen to this pod or play fantasy who they just don't want to pick the most popular captain, right? They just want to be a little different. And I think that you could do a lot worse than Solanke at home to Luton Town, right?
I like it. Yeah, I think that is definitely fun. Okay, so XDIH, that's been sorted. The last question we have to answer, Josh, is if we were going to watch one match in game week 17, even put the fantasy factor aside, which one are you going to recommend?
I think, okay, I guess I'll go with Newcastle Fulham. That's the one that I am personally very interested in because Newcastle are in a real down moment and Fulham are in a real up moment.
Yeah.
But Newcastle is a really tough place to go. It's right. It's just very hard to go there and get a result, especially a win. Can Fulham do something there in that match? I think it's a really interesting contrast between those two clubs.
I do. I'll do a repeat from my Bowen, and I think West Ham Wolves, two particularly evenly matched teams based on form. You would say that maybe West Ham had the slightly better squad, but Wolves might be in slightly better form. So that one I think is going to be fun to watch for those reasons.
Yeah. Liverpool Man United, just for comedy's sake, I think is also a good one. I think there's a hand. I'm kind of excited, and honestly, Forest Spurs, I think that'll be a lot of fun. I mean, now you'll be able to root for Son again starting Friday. So now we can both enjoy that match. I think there's a part of me that wants to just not make any transfers this week, or not kind of deal with any of those problems, and just bring in Porro, right? Like that just seems like a fun. I would love to have Porro for this match. I think in 18 I'm going to have Porro, whether I do it with a straight transfer or a hit. I think that there's an extremely good chance that I have him for game week 18, just given that Spurs host Everton and I'll be down a couple of players, as a result of not having Man City. That's assuming I hold Haaland, but that's where I am at the moment. This is one of those podcasts. Sometimes, Brandon, we do these podcasts and it's pretty straightforward what we're going to do. And then there's other times when I have like 8 players that are 75% to play, and the Champions League and Europa League have yet to happen. And I feel like everything I say, I've got to qualify a little bit. Unfortunately, this pod is like that with me, where I really haven't made my mind up about my transfers because I have to see what happens over the next couple of days. So I don't know that I'll be kind of set until hopefully by Thursday evening, Brendan. I'll use it as an opportunity to transition one last time to talk about our Patreon. And we do a Patreon pod. We'll do one on Thursday evening. You and I often do our poker game after that, Brendan. It's my last chance to finish in the black in that poker group. So that's very important to me as well. So, but on that Thursday pod, Brandon, I will hopefully be a little more settled. All the European fixtures will be concluded by then as well. So we'll do that pod. If you want to listen to that, or you just want to support the Seat Cheaters, say thank you. You can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating to do so.
Yeah, and thanks, as always, to our producer patrons, that highest tier that you can find at that Patreon page. Big thanks to Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, Bob Ascoon, James Holland, Dave Wagner, Lodal, Nick Wright, Lazarus Janos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, at FPL Merch, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Buffalo Wild Wings, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Volger, Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, Shalin F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Heath Cram, Thomas Tislov, Noah Louise, Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Dan Parsons, James C., Matthew Skinner, Frode Jacobson, Brennan, Daniel Hart, Lolly, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, and Gareth H. Gareth, I sent you a message about your pint glass. Get at us with that information. And if Patreon is not your thing, you can also help the podcast by rating, reviewing, and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media, wherever that happens, and find all this information and more at alwayscheating.com. Josh, I don't know if you heard the news, but they changed the name of Twitter.
He did.
This is
what's
the new name? I can't say it. I can't. I'm not allowed to say
stupid. We're going to call it Twitter forever until it dies or until he sells it. I don't even know. Right. But that's a separate conversation. What is the social media network? I don't even, where am I supposed to be these days? Like Blue Sky, Twitter. I'm just still on Twitter, just whiling away, waiting for the next one. Have you done the Threads thing yet? Like, have you joined Threads? I don't get it. It feels like it's like a megaphone kind of social network where no one talks to each other. You just kind of blast things out. That's kind of what that's for?
I went on Threads and I didn't really, it didn't serve any need for me.
Yeah.
TikTok is the one that everyone's talking about, right?
TikTok is fun. Exactly. I know.
But right, well, I'm not on TikTok, so that it's all lost on me. How can I get out of social media is the question I'm constantly asking myself, and stay in podcasts. Podcasts is the only way I communicate with the outside world now.
That's true. You're kind of a YouTube guy too. You like the tube of you. You're on there sometimes.
I do like the YouTube. Does that qualify as social media? I mean, it's content generation. I guess it's of a piece.
I'd say it's veering closer and closer to being social media, especially as people, like live stream and people chat with each other in the live streams or ask questions. I think it sort of feels like you're getting some of that Twitter type like interaction there. So anyway, Brandon, this is just bonus content for anyone who's still listening this far into the pod. So thank you everyone for listening. Good luck this weekend. Yeah, get on TikTok if you're not already. It's maybe they're stealing your data. I don't know, but it is a fun way to spend 30 minutes when you want to turn your brain off at 11 p.m. So that's my final recommendation, along with Captain Salah and Game Week 17. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.